Hello everyone and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. Pasture conditions may not necessarily be at the top of your mind as we turn the corner into winter, but experts say now is a good time to assess and plan. We caught up with our new Extension Forage System Specialist Alex Roccatelli for perspective.
Well, I will keep in the same question actually. And if the question is, yes, we had a good production this year, well, we need to acknowledge that each year is different from each other. Temperature, rainfall, wind pressures will change from year to year. So the management needs to be adapted to the new environment that's going to come. Sometimes the same management is not going to work in a different environment. Let's say that next year is going to be a dry year. No rainfall, fertilizers, nutrients will not be taken up by the plants. In this case, we may not apply fertilizer until we see rain in the forecast. Herbicides. Well, when we talk about weed control, it might be more difficult in a drought because weeds can thrive better than introduced forages in a drought condition, and also herbicides will not work pretty well in that circumstances. So unfortunately, we need to keep in mind that we might have low forage production in a dry condition. And what you need to do is look at your grazing management and try to improve it, to use better grazing managements. For instance, rotational grazing or mob grazing.
Now, this year was pretty interesting for people in Oklahoma. Some areas got lots of rain, we saw flooding, others were, nearing drought conditions again, right, or in them. So with that kind of variety, let's say it's been a wet year. In terms of planting, they had decent pastures. It was a wet year, things grew well. What do they need to do this time of year to plan in order to be successful starting next spring?
Well, if next year turns out to be a wet year, great, we really can produce more forage. However, some things may happen that can jeopardize that production. For instance, nutrient leaching. If the soil is saturated and comes more rain, nitrogen can leach to the subsoil, and even potassium if you are in a sand soil. In that situation, lots of rainfall and it's a very wet soil that you are handling, I would say let's split especially nitrogen application in more timing and less in each time that you're applying.
In pastures you can have soil compaction issues when it rains a lot.
The act of the animal stepping at the same place for too long, that can result in soil pugging or compaction. And that may happen most of the time around the water and the supplement sources. So in a wet condition, when the soil are more prone to compaction, to pugging, what we would recommend is let's place the supplement away from the water so the herd, the animals start to move more, not stay in the same location. And even if it's possible, along the season, try to move, to rotate the location of both sources.
To give a little bit of variety in the pasture and give the grass a break, I guess, right?
Exactly right.
Thank you, Alex, and we'll see you again soon for more pasture advice. Alex Roccatelli, our new Extension Forage System Specialist.
So many times we hear Brian talking about NPK application. Brian, let's talk about soil nutrition. Walk us through what each one of those mean.
Absolutely. So before we even get to NPK, let's just talk about plant essential nutrients. There's 16 of them, broken into 4 primary categories. The first 3 you have are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Those are elements that the plant gets from the soil, or from the water and the air. Then we go into our macro, our secondary, and our micros. Now they're broken up in those parts, and it's not about the importance of it to the crop, it's about how much is taken up by the crop. So N, nitrogen, P, phosphorus, K, potassium are our macronutrients. Those are the 3 nutrients taken up in the greatest quantity by any of our growing plants and crops. And so when it comes to it in an environment, those are often the most limiting because they're used in the greatest quantities. Not to be seen that they are any more important than the other nutrients, the secondary nutrients, calcium, sulfur, and magnesium, or any of the micronutrients. It's just that the utilization of them so high, we'll see them more often as a deficiency in the soil system.
Are there plants that take up larger amounts than, say, another plant?
Yeah, so all of the plants will have a little bit different ratio of the nutrients. However, when it comes to the division of the three, macro, secondary, micro, they're all about the same. But you can look at it in terms of wheat and canola. Canola may take up more potassium than a wheat. Cotton crop may use more K than some other crops. So all the crops have their specific ratios, but overall, you still have those three sections.
And that's why sometimes it's important to kind of rotate crops.
Absolutely. Crop rotation will give you a lot of opportunity, not only to mix up the needs of the plants based upon soil, but it'll change the rooting structure, and it's just good for the system as a whole to have a non-monoculture system.
Let's talk about the N, the P, and the K. Walk us through those.
Absolutely. So nitrogen, you know, that's one we talk about most. Nitrogen is important in the plant. It's a part of proteins, and even more so as part of chlorophyll, the green of a plant. So without nitrogen, there is no chlorophyll, there is no green. Chlorophyll is what gives plants the capability to make their own energy source and their own food. So nitrogen is one of our most important nutrients. It's taken up in one of the largest quantities, and of the other three, of the total of the three macros, phosphorus, potassium, is the most mobile, which means when it's in the soil, it can move. So with rainfall, it can move down. With temperatures, it can go up in the atmosphere. So that's why we find nitrogen as being the most limited nutrient of all the nutrients.
Okay, now potassium from there.
So moving on to potassium, potassium is our moderately mobile nutrient. It is very important in the plant, especially when it comes to stomatal opening and closing. The stomata is what regulates water moving in and out of the plant. So K is exceptionally important in that. So that also means in droughty conditions or water limited conditions, K fertility is extremely important. K is also the nutrient that we will have the most return back in any residue. So whether that's straw, whether that's stover, of all the three macronutrients, K will be the one that comes back into the system more so than any other.
Let's talk about phosphorus.
And phosphorus, so that's the third of our macronutrients. Phosphorus is what would be termed as maybe the energy superhero of the plant. It is integral for DNA, and it's also important in ATP. ATP is the energy source that plants create. So they take sunlight and they go through several processes to end up with ATP. So phosphorus is the powerhouse or the power source of the plant. We'll also see it extremely important when it comes to early establishment, rooting structures, and early growth. And so phosphorus, especially in our environment, tends to be the second most important nutrient next to nitrogen. It's one of our most limiting in Oklahoma, and most important when it comes to getting a good root system established.
Now, there are actual visual ways to tell if one of them is deficient.
Absolutely. So when we first look at nutrient deficiencies, trying to identify, there has to be one question asked first. Is it on the new growth or old growth? So that means new growth means a brand new tissue. If it's a corn plant, the very top leaves or the bottom leaves is old growth. With macronutrients, the N, P, and K, they're all found on the older, lower growth. So that's one of the first things to look at, is where on the plant are you seeing the discoloration, the yellowing, the purpling, whatever. If it's old growth, it could be one of our three macronutrients. Nitrogen is easily determined from the others. Nitrogen is the yellowing color. Our plants will be stunted. The yellowing will appear at the tip of a leaf and move down the midrib. So that midrib is that central component of a corn leaf, cotton leaf, those primary ribs, and so you see it from the tip going down. If you look at a corn leaf, it looks like a yellow arrow pointing at the plant. Potassium is our other yellowing nutrient. Again, it's on the lower, older leaves, but it moves along the leaf margin. So you actually have the tip of the plant turning yellow and the outer edges of the leaf turning yellow. So on a big corn leaf, what you have is a green arrow pointing away from the plant. And so it's that outer margin first. Phosphorus of our macronutrients is by far the easiest. It has a purple discoloration. So phosphorus is one of the few nutrients that will create a purple coloration in cereal grain or corn. So you'll see a stunted plant, and the lower older leaves are going to be purplish to reddish color.
And at that point, a producer doesn't just run out and go purchase some fertilizer. They should really look at a soil test, correct? I
absolutely recommend looking at a soil test. You start seeing deficiencies, take a soil test to confirm what you're seeing. Right now, if they're seeing any of these 3 deficiencies, there's still time to recover. Nitrogen, absolutely plenty of time. We'll be seeing top dress moving on through March. Potassium, we're getting a little bit closer to that edge, but potassium's relatively mobile, so we can still get it on now, get it into the plant. Phosphorus is not a nutrient we commonly recommend as a top dress, but if you're seeing deficiencies now, by all rights, get out there, put on some 1846O diammonium phosphate or some 1152O or 1034. That's our 3 primary phosphorus sources. Get it on now. Let the rains coming in the near future and through the winter get it in the soil, so at spring green up, the wheat crop out there has the capability to take advantage of it.
And actually, Oklahoma State University has done research on soil nutrition for over 100 years, 120 years.
Over 125 with Magruder plots, of course, just down the way. And where we're at right now is 222. It's one of our other long-term fertility studies. This was established in 1971 by Dr. Billy Tucker. And what we have here is a nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium experiment, you would say. So where we're standing right now is the check plot that hasn't been fertilized since 1971. And then we have rates of nitrogen with added rates of phosphorus and added rates of potassium as we look through the treatments.
And you can actually visually tell a little bit different in the wheat.
Absolutely, especially looking up, going down. If you just look at the row cover, how much row space we have, this check plot has a lot more gap between the 2 rows than the fertilized plots next to it.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Brian, for explaining the N, the P, and the K to us. And actually, we have a link on our website, sunup.okstate.edu, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about this.
I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet Weather Report. Gary has an early Christmas present for Oklahoma. We won't rattle the package or drop it to see if it breaks. Gary will join us shortly to open the package for you. The rainfall over the last 2 months has been superb. A map going back 60 days from Wednesday has a lot of intense colors. Those pink areas in the southeast had over 18 inches of rain. On the low end, the green areas had rainfall amounts below 4 inches. The green areas in Harper, Woods, Woodward, and Ellis counties in the northwest overlay soils that still lack deeper moisture. That lack of deep soil moisture shows up on a fractional water index map at 24 inches. The 0, 1/10, and 2/10 values indicate dry soils, the brown-colored areas. At 10 inches, the lowest fractional water index values jumped to 7/10 at Freedom and Cherokee. Across the majority of the state, values were 1, the highest and wettest fractional water index value. As we finish up a week of above average temperatures, we wanted to take a look at some November and early December temperatures compared to the Mesonet 15-year average. An air temperature graph from Woodward shows during the early half of November, average daily air temperatures, the black line, were typically above the 15-year average, the green line. We had 2 short periods of November cold where daily average temperatures got down to the long-term average low air temperatures. Now in early December at Woodward, temperatures are back above the long-term average and bumping up over the long-term average maximum temperature, the red line. That trend holds true for Shawnee and central Oklahoma. We'll have to wait to see how air temperatures over the rest of December play out. Now here's Gary with an early Christmas present for you and all Oklahomans.
Thanks, Alan. Good morning, everyone. And more importantly, Merry Christmas to the state of Oklahoma. For the first time in about 4 months, the state's drought monitor map has no color in it. Let's take a look at that map and see what it looks like. Well, exactly like I said, there's no color in it. So last week we got rid of all the moderate drought, and this week we got rid of all that yellow color, that abnormally dry intensity level on the U.S. drought monitor. So no troubles in Oklahoma right now with precipitation deficits or anything of that nature. And if we take a look at the United States drought monitor map, so for the nation as a whole, we see much of that flash drought that has plagued the southern plains over into the southeastern parts of the United States over the last 3 to 4 months. It's completely gone. And if we take a look at the observed precipitation map, let's just look at the last 30 days. We can see a good indication why. And here you see they're from about 4 inches, that yellow color from up in northwestern Oklahoma, all the way up to more than 20 inches down across southeastern Oklahoma over into Arkansas, and then varying amounts as we go down to towards the Gulf Coast. That right there is why we got rid of that flash drought. I think that's the last time we have to worry about drought in Oklahoma for a while, and for the rest of the southern plains. And probably until spring, if that El Nino works out the way it's supposed to. And that, I'm really glad to say, is the gift that keeps on giving. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist, joins us now. And Kim, the December WASDE has been released. What did it tell us?
Nothing. It was essentially a non-event. They made no changes on U.S. wheat, minor changes in corn, and in soybeans, no changes in beans, just minor changes in the grain sorghum. It should have zero impact on prices.
Now, in terms of this time of year, it's kind of quiet, right?
Yes, just not much happening between Thanksgiving and New Year's. You'll have a rash of selling after we get to January 1, we get into the new tax year. So what you tend to have is the prices moving in a narrow range, but you will get some volatility. Some producers will be selling wheat or corn or beans to get some Christmas money. So you get a little activity. So you got the sellers, not the buyers, or somebody will come in, an importer will buy U.S. product, and you'll get a little rally there. But overall, it's just a non-event from Thanksgiving through New Year's.
Now, in terms of the international picture, let's take a look at some of the news, starting with the Ukraine.
Well, there are some things going on in the Ukraine. You know, they got lower planted acres this year. They're having winter kill on their winter wheat. There's some potential problems with the Ukraine. However, if they lose 20% of their crop, that's about 200 million bushels. This last year they produced right at 1 billion. That is 0.7% of world's wheat production. So yeah, it can have some impact. You got, there's talk in Russia, this is how desperate the market is to talk about something. They're worried about the snow cover in the Russian wheat. You know, we're they're getting a little snow on it, it's just not deep enough. And that's an indication that the market is really looking for something to talk about, and there's just not much there.
And then there's some political news out of Argentina as well.
There is some news out of Argentina, and it does have the potential to impact our prices. This week, the new Argentinian president was inaugurated. He said that he will do away with the export taxes on wheat, corn, and beans. That's 23% on wheat, 25% on corn, 35% on soybeans. But you read between the lines, he's saying, well, we may lower those, or we may do away with them, but it'll only be for a few months. We'll just have to wait and see what goes on there. But sometime on down the road, it does have the potential to impact our prices.
Last but not least, in terms of perspective for producers this time of year, planning strategy for next year, some things to keep in mind?
Well, I think right now what producers need to be doing, if they've got some wheat in the bin this last week, we had the dollar index go down about 2.5 points. That's about 15 cent increase in prices if it's brought in the market. I think if you're going to sell some wheat or corn or something, sell on these little rallies, because I don't think you're going to get much as you're looking out into the 2016 year. Prices are relatively low, at or below the cost of production, or just barely above the variable cost of production. I think you got to manage your money well. sell on rallies and know what price you need so that you can cover some cost.
Okay, Kim Anderson, thanks a lot. We'll see you again soon.
Last week on the Cow-Calf Corner, you recall, we spent some time emphasizing the differences in cows that were in a body condition score 4, those that we thought a little too thin, those that were kind of on the borderline, the 5s, and then the cows that were in certainly good body condition, the body condition score 6 category. Lots of data from years past had indicated that was pretty appropriate. As we look at more recent research that's been done, for instance, with some folks at Oregon State University, combined with USDA scientists and scientists from the University of Nebraska, they looked at cows that in the last trimester, right before calving, were in different body condition scores. They had a group that they planned to have in a body condition score 4 category in that last trimester. Well, as it finally turned out, they averaged 4.4. Compared those to counterparts that they fed to be in a body condition score 6 going into the calving season or during that last trimester. And those averaged not quite a 6, 5.7. But as they followed those two groups on through calving and the following breeding season, they really noticed some substantial differences. For instance, the cows that were in the body condition score close to a 6 averaged 10% more live calves born that year and 10% more calves weaned. That amounted to 57 additional pounds per cow being available for sale then, just due to the differences in the way those two groups of cows were fed in that trimester. And in today's calf market, that's really a substantial difference, enough, I think, to certainly cover the differences in any feed costs that you might have. But the story doesn't stop there. As they followed those cows then through the next breeding season, what we talked about last week certainly came to fruition in this very recent study. The cows that were in thin body condition at calving time rebred at a 79% rate, and that was in a 60-day breeding season. Their counterparts that were fed to be in that 5.7 average body condition score, or close to a 6, 92% of those rebred in that 60-day breeding season. That says then, of course, that we've got a substantial advantage the following year just based upon what happened in this calendar year and during this feeding cycle of those cows. So back to the same point. We want to do the best we can to supplement these beef cows in that last trimester to make sure that they're in good body condition at calving time. We'll have more live calves and we'll have a better rebreeding percentage for the following year, and certainly in the long run I think that means more profit for our beef cow operation. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you once again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
With New Year's right around the corner, we want to talk today about the tradition of black-eyed peas, and we're joined by William McGlynn, a food scientist here at the Food and Ag Product Center. And William, let's start with just a history lesson. Where did this tradition of eating black-eyed peas start?
Well, the honest answer to that is no one really knows. Some folks say that it goes back to the Civil War, when food was scarce, and there were times when northern troops would pass through an area. Of course, in those days, armies lived off the land. They would collect all the food they could find to feed themselves, but, so the story goes, they didn't think that the black-eyed peas were fit for human consumption. And so they would leave those behind, and so those were left for people to survive on. And so that's one of the traditions, one of the explanations for that tradition of why they're good luck, because that's what people had to eat. But some folks say that it goes back a lot farther than that. There are traditions that go back all the way to ancient Egypt of eating a humble meal in celebration of the New Year, and the idea was that even if you were a very wealthy family, eating that kind of humble country food showed that you were humble before the gods, and that would ensure good luck for the coming year. So there are lots of possible explanations. When you think about it, in those days, unless you were very wealthy, if you wanted to prepare some kind of feast in the middle of winter, what are you going to eat? It's going to be some kind of preserved food, some kind of dried food. Well, you look at the traditional good luck New Year's Day meal in the South, you've got southern peas, black-eyed peas, you've got hog jowls, cured. Maybe you have some winter greens if you're lucky, and you've got cornbread. All of those things are things that you can come by in the winter. So it just makes sense that that's going to be your feast, and so why not make it good luck?
Let's look at the nutritional value of black-eyed peas. Are they good for you?
They are good for you. Actually, like a lot of legumes, they are an excellent source of calcium. You might not think that, but one serving of black-eyed peas, which is about 2/3 of a cup cooked, is going to have about 15% of your daily value for calcium. They're an excellent source of fiber. It's going to be about 25% of your daily value for fiber. And they're a pretty good source of protein as well. So yes, they're good for you.
I usually think about black-eyed peas about once a year, but it's probably a good idea, given those nutritional aspects, to incorporate them into your diet more often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of us could stand to eat more of those types of foods in our diet. So yeah, I would recommend incorporating them more often. And they're delicious too. And a lot of people don't know this, but there are actually a lot of different varieties. You know, black-eyed peas is one type of southern pea, but there are pink-eye purple hulls, there are Crowder peas, there are cream style, there are lots of different kinds.
And I'm sure lots of recipes too.
And they're all delicious.
Now, if I eat them throughout the year, will I continue to have like resurges of good luck?
Probably.
Okay.
But you know, some folks say if you really want the good luck to stick, you have to eat that whole meal. It's not enough just to eat the black-eyed peas. You got to also have the hog jowls and the greens and the cornbread.
Yeah, let me think about that one. Okay, William, thanks a lot, and have a happy new year. Best of luck.
Well, same to you.
That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can find us anytime at sunup.okstate.edu, and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next time at SUNUP.